Welcome to the Clemson Dubcast. It is first day of November as we record this at TigerIllustrated.com. Really looking forward to talking about Notre Dame this week as we get through Hump Day and beyond. On the website right now, a really thoughtful and in-depth piece from Paul Strelo and I on the topic of fans' expectations versus appreciation. Interesting and fascinating topic on a lot of levels, particularly right now with the team at 4-4. My good friends Blake Smith and Brooke Archenhold have been part of the podcast since the beginning, way back in August of 2018. They have an accomplished team of personal injury attorneys at Parham, Smith, and Archenhold based in Greenville. They are Clemson people, and their skillful attorneys have decades of experience in complicated litigation matters, taking a special interest in medical malpractice, nursing home abuse, and neglect, car accident cases that have left the individuals involved in serious trouble. For a free consultation at Parham, Smith, and Archenhold, call 864-990-4581 or online at parhamlaw.com. That's P-A-R-H-A-M law.com. When you're ready for a complete renovation in your home or business, open the door to more with Harris Home and Harris Commercial. Their local experienced team will totally transform any room space, from beautiful floor coverings to construction to finished details. Harris handles every step of your renovation process, whether it's a kitchen or living room or an industrial or educational setting, like some of the positively stunning work they've done at Clemson University. Go to discoverharris.com and experience a total renovation transformation from Harris Home and Harris Commercial. Another loyal supporter of the Dubcast is Blackacre Law Firm in Greenville, a subsidiary of Parham, Smith, and Archenhold. Blackacre helps South Carolina residents achieve their dreams of home ownership by providing experienced professional representation for real estate closings. Attention to detail is crucial in real estate law. Blackacre is committed to making sure nothing gets by them preparing residential or commercial closings. Blackacre also offers estate planning services for their clients in the Greenville area. Find out more about Blackacre at 864-326-3507. Okay, spent more than an hour talking to Mickey Plyler, and it took a long time for us to get down to talking about actual football. But some really worthwhile discussion here, I think, on fan behavior, on coach behavior, and how to process it all, and how to maybe move forward and just be better and nicer no matter who you are. Here we go. Enjoy. All right, joined by Mickey Plyler, who is on his way home from Easley. Is that where the new station location is?
Yes, Larry. You came to our old location, which wasn't very good. You spent hours over there with us. I need you to come to the new one, man. We're proud of this place. It's really nice over here. Our owners and management team. We've got the best radio station I've ever seen. So come by soon. We'd love to have you.
I guess we can speak about this now since the old station's gone. There was some weird smell. Was there something? Was there like a septic tank or something that would leak or something? That's part of what I remember.
Yeah, there was a time there, and it went on for like 6 weeks, and we had these plumbers over there, and it's bad when you hear this. The plumber's going, buddy, I don't know. But I wanted to call him out, but I know nothing about plumbing, so I wanted to be like a fan and just call him out and go, no, this is what I would do. But I need plumbing. Well, you talk about relief, because that's one of those things. I grew up in a mill town, and the paper mill had this awful smell to it, and you just didn't get used to it. And we lived there for 12 years, and you never got used to it. And so for 6 weeks, I was kind of reminded of my childhood, how bad it was.
Wait a minute. West Columbia, what?
No. And I was born in Lancaster and lived in Chester.
Okay.
Until I was 12, and there was a place called Bow Waters. Okay. And to that point that anytime any family member ever passed gas, you could always go, oh man, Bow Waters is bad today.
Well, when you said that, when you said you grew up around a bad smell, I was thinking, oh, did he grow up near the chicken plant in West Columbia?
No.
Or Casey? Is that Casey or West Columbia? What is that? Where the chicken thing?
That's like Powdersville and Easy. I don't know where it starts and where it ends. But we grew up playing Brooke and Casey through all those things. I'll tell you another quick story about chicken farms. My granddad was the state inspector for eggs. He would be the guy who graded eggs in the state of South Carolina. So I grew up going to chicken farms, and that's another one that, like right now in my head, I can remember the smell. Like in my nostrils, I'm going, oh. So, Larry, that's a great start, man, to a good podcast.
Chickens.
Little bad smell.
We're talking about chickens, bad smells, nostalgia. Yeah.
Yeah. 4 and 4 seasons, stinky seasons. Stinky, smelly. Yeah.
All right. So the past 9 hours on your radio show, what has it been like?
Well, let me back up even off air, because I know, we do on air and off air stuff. David Hood from TigerNet texted me Monday. So Monday, I got a great source who said that there were words on the team bus afterwards between a player and a coach. And I didn't know, I knew the player, but I didn't mention his name, but I didn't know if that's a full-time, assistant coach on the field guy or sports staff. And I didn't mention too much of it. I just said, locker room stuff goes on after losses. I said I was even reporting that, that a player kind of snapped back at a coach after the game. And I get home, and I get this text from David Hood, and he said, "Did you say this?" And it was a lady on a Clemson Facebook group page that said, "Did y'all listen to Mickey Plyler today? He reported that there was a large brawl in the locker room between players and coaches." and so I went on. I had to join the group and say, "No." And the lady said, "Well, rumor mill has it this is the case." I went, "No, you're the rumor mill. You made this up." Didn't even come close to saying that. So Monday was about putting out that fire. And then Monday night.
Let me interrupt right quick. That was a great advertisement for TigerIllustrated.com and the paywall that weeds out a lot of it. Not all of it. Not all of it. It's not perfect on our circus of a message board, but that weeds out some of that stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, but then those people are members at all those other places, and they're going to these other places for information too. And it's dangerous, man. And you know this through your experience. You are as cautious. I am as cautious as anybody I know in this field, and one thing that someone cannot hear right or want to hear differently than how you said it. And then next thing you know, I used to get phone calls. You and I have talked about this before. So when Reggie Herron, who's a friend and a great guy and a great football coach, defense coordinator, and you know this, like he would fly off, man. He was Sonny Corleone, like shoot first and ask questions, right? So I can't tell you how many times that I'd get a phone call, right? And it'd be Reggie Herron. And he'd say, "You no good SOB. I can't believe you said that about the radio this morning. You know that the stats, we went 40% of the time, and you said 80 this morning. I can't believe you said that." Now, hold, Reggie, hold on. Caller said that, and I said, "No, that's not the case." And he goes, "Oh, man, I'm sorry. How you doing? Everything good?" Yeah. So I know you get that from administrators and coaches all the time. Is like, why'd you say that on that message board? No, I didn't say that. Somebody else said that. So it's just, and the other thing is, like, as fans, man, this is our hobby. But the reason that Reggie called me and cussed me out is, man, that ain't his hobby. This is his livelihood, and this is his family. And we live in a small town, and I know it's a big market. Big club and a big market, big program. But I go back to the time where I got a phone call from someone inside the football office the day that 2 coordinators got fired. Mike O'Kane and I think John Lovett, I think. And so I got a call and said, "Hey, man, O'Kane and Lovett just got fired." And I'm on the air at the time. I'm during a break. And I had to make a decision, and I chose not to mention it. Yeah. And my thing there, Larry, is that, like, those wives and those kids didn't need to hear that from me. That's something that Dad's going to come home and tell them, not a radio guy. So the point there is, man, you just got to be careful who your audience is. I know you get phone calls from guys all the time, coaches all the time, but you've been in it for the long run. This is a long haul for you, and I kind of do the same thing. But, like, it's just reckless, man. And the Tylers of the world, the Spartanburgs of the world, like, they don't have that vested interest in being that guy. And that's what's dangerous, is that somebody reads it, somebody says it, and all of a sudden that's the gospel. Now I know that's the case, and many, many times it is, but many times it's not.
I'll say this. Well, first of all, you mentioned your sort of humanity on, okay, I'm not going to run with this. I don't want their family to hear this. Similar episode with me, something I learned from back in 2008, October of 2008, when it was the fateful day, October 13th, when it all went down, and it was already out that Tommy was out. And so then the next question beyond, of course, who's going to replace him on an interim basis is who else is out. And so I went and posted up at the McFadden building, and this tells you how different those times were 15 years ago. Football offices wide open over there at McFadden building. Anybody could just walk in. I mean, that's how I developed some of the relationships I had with the coaches, was just walking by their office and saying, hey, you got a minute? Walked in the lobby there in the front and just sat down. And Ren Wyndham was in her office. I could tell things were a little uncomfortable. I see Rob Spence walking down the hallway and walking out. I said, Rob, do you have a second? And he said, no. And I said, did you get fired? And I'm walking with him, and he doesn't say anything. I mean, his face is white. He's clearly devastated. And I remember Donald Hemel was also walking out, and he's like, Larry, come on, dude. Just back off. And something in the moment, a lot younger. You got that testosterone or whatever, the competitive juices. You want to get the story. It's the biggest day, and still the biggest day, really, in my professional career, with that changeover and those monumental things happening. You want to be on top of it, but you also want to be fair and be human and be nice. And so it's not an easy question to answer, not an easy balance, but just saying that's something that, here now in my much older age, if I were in that position, I'd probably say, Coach Spence or Coach whoever, do you have a minute? And if it's no, let him go, right? Let him go.
Yeah. Well, in that case, too, he was a different dude, but he had a great, you remember his wife and their kids, and they had this great family dynamic. They were a great part of the community, and he had a big family, and so, boy, that guy had to go home and tell his wife and kids that day. And I know, man, can you imagine coming in and telling your two girls, right?
Yeah.
Or dad, somebody said something about dad today, or I heard this about dad on the radio, or I read this about dad. It's like, yeah, I mean, you inherit, when you get into it, they're big boys and all that, but those kids don't. It's a different deal, man. And that's where, I want changes, and I want things to be right in certain cases, but with those changes, there's guys are going to lose, and I feel confident there's guys going to lose their job this year. And lost their jobs last year. Brandon Streeter's a dear friend of mine. I saw him at Publix a few months ago, and we had this interaction about how's your family doing and what's your travel like. And he's staying at home down in Athens now that he misses his kids every night at dinner sometimes. And, Bradley LeCroy having to drive back and forth in baseball outside of baseball, or even on baseball weekends. Monty Lee having to drive back and forth to Columbia. They have kids, man. And as a dad now, I'm like, what? That'd be so hard to do, and these are human beings. And message board guy and radio guy sometimes forget that. Or you and I live in a small town, and I on that same day, Larry, on the night that they introduced Dabo, I was over there at McFadden, if you remember. Well, they introduced the head coach in Death Valley up there, but the interim press conference was in Death Valley, over in McFadden. And one of the coaches, who was a friend of mine, came up to me and said, "Man, I appreciate you getting us fired today." I was like, what?
Wow.
And he goes, yeah, all that stuff you taught last week, and you stayed by the computer stuff. And I was like, so in other words, your crappy season didn't have anything to do with that? This is my fault? And he goes, yeah, man, it was the pressure, this. And we've talked since, we made up since. But one of the things I remember saying to that coach was, so how about the fact that you're still on staff and you got a chance to keep your job? He goes, man, this guy ain't getting that job. And here we are 17, 16 years later, whatever, 15 years later, and guys won 2 national championships, played for 4 and 6 college football playoffs. But that was the message I got that night. Well, this guy ain't getting that job. Thanks for getting me fired.
I'll push back on a little on something you said, sort of in defense of fans. When you say, hey, this is a hobby. All right. I think of a hobby as, hey, I'm a mountain biker. Right? I'm a wakeboarder, something I do for fun in my spare time. I don't think that's the most precise term to use. I think fans and I don't want to be dismissive and say, oh, they're just fanatics. This is their soul. It really is. And it's kind of unfortunate. It's more important than religion. In a lot of cases, regardless of what anybody says, they devote more time to thinking about and talking about and writing about a college football team and 18 to 22-year-olds through the course of 365 days in a year than they do whatever their spirituality is. That's just a fact. So that's not – I'm just pushing back a little on that. You're talking about generational support, generational love, generational investment emotionally, financially. So I think hobby is probably selling it a little bit short. What do you think about that?
I would disagree.
Okay.
And I'm not here to tell anybody how to live their life. Man, my gracious, you talk about Dabo saying he's not perfect. I've made more mistakes than anybody listening to this podcast right now. I'm a knucklehead when it comes to life a lot of times. But as the older I get, if you spend more time on a football team than your spirituality, then you got bigger problems than a 4-4 season or a football season. Like, at the end of the day, what your salvation looks like, and I'm not trying to come down to any listener, any subscriber of yours. I don't have it all figured out by any stretch. But my gut tells me, as the older I get, as a father and a husband, and someone I heard this great quote one time, Larry, and it was from Muhammad Ali, and he's at this British talk show, and this like 8-year-old kid, it's toward the end of his boxing career, and this 8-year-old kid says, Muhammad, what are you going to do after you finish boxing? And he said, I'm going to get prepared to meet God. That's what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I'm going to go prepare to meet God. And man, the guy did a great job of that, obviously. But with that said, I can't tell you how much more that's my priority than the outcome of a football game. And that wasn't always the case, Larry. I mean, I will tell you that I was that guy for many, many years. But now the priorities I have on being a husband and being a father, and where I'm going to spend eternity, to me it is a hobby. And especially, I feel like I've been forced as a fan because of my thoughts on the transfer portal and NIL, and it just feels different to me now. So I'm not coming down to hear this because people will hear that and go, oh man, this guy's telling me how to live my life. You live your life how you want to. And I don't want to be judgmental, but the fact that a football game is more than that to you, and maybe I'm not the great fan anymore, whatever, but if it's the case, then my opinion is I'd have my priorities out of whack if that's my life.
It's more than a hobby.
I'll say this, Larry, like my hobby is golf, okay?
Right.
And for years, before I got married, before I had kids, for years, I would spend thousands and thousands of dollars and spend hours and hours getting lessons, buying equipment, practicing, preparing. And so, like, my hobby as golf was huge. Like, it was as big as my fandom of a football team was. And so, like, even the teams I would pull for, like, I was an Earnhardt fan in NASCAR. And the reason was because that guy poured it into that. I was a Faldo fan. Like, I felt like those guys poured it into it. So maybe my level of hobby was different than that. Like, I was lifting weights. I didn't lift weights. Lifting weights wasn't my hobby. Working out wasn't my hobby because I kind of did it, like, I half-assed it. But, like, in golf, my hobby, it wasn't any half-assed. I'm not saying that fans aren't 100, I'm not saying that fans aren't totally devoted and they love this thing and, it's great to live and die every single Saturday with every single loss and it hurts when they lose. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying it's still, it ain't your wife, it ain't your life, it ain't your job, it ain't your spirituality, it ain't your salvation. That's a hobby, and we can agree to disagree on that. But I'm not saying that these people are wrong for feeling so strong about a program. Heck, if they didn't, I wouldn't have a job. You wouldn't have a job. Exactly. But maybe that just my hobbies I just put so much into maybe. So maybe I think higher the word hobby than you do. Is that fair?
Yeah. Maybe we just had different definitions, but I'm just saying, if my hobby is golf or, I don't know, running, and I run a 5K or something, and I have a bad, I don't know, I don't run the time that I want, or I don't shoot, I have a bad back nine, it affects my day. I'm frustrated. But, okay, that's a hobby. But when in this neck of the woods, or any neck of the woods where college football is huge, during times of struggle, it's traumatic. It hurts, like you just said. I mean, they don't say, say, "Hey, I got my blood runneth orange." People say that all the time. That's not what I associate with a hobby. And like you said, if it were just okay, yeah, they lost. All right, well, we'll just
that's fair. I think I'm not going to push back on that. I think that's fair. Even then, I mean, some of the things I know we were going to talk about today is I had a guy call my show today, and he goes, "Well, you're shareholders, and you're invested in this company." And so my pushback to that was, well, shareholders don't make policy.
Mm-hmm.
Like in mine, your job, I've got guys. I think you know the game of football as well as anybody in the media. And I enjoy watching your Thursday film type stuff.
Thank you.
With that said, and you and I are dear friends and have been and will be, I hope, forever. But with that said, if I'm looking to decide what a game plan is on Saturday, or who needs to be hired or who needs to be fired, or the direction of a program moving forward on big picture type stuff, like, I'm not trusting you.
That's right. I agree.
Right? Because if I want to read a great Clemson book, I'm going to go. I've got your books on my shelf right now. I've read your books, and I think you're great at it. And I think you're great at your daily stuff. I think you make great observations. But you're a writer, a damn good one, as good as anybody's in this market. But you're a writer, and I'm not going to depend on you to tell me, man, I think this guy has to fire this guy because of this. But now here's the same thing. Even if you were trained, which you and I are not trained in that profession, and on top of that, we have less access now than we've ever had before. So, I think Tyler, he made some good points. He was lost in the condescending tone, but even then, I'm not going to trust Tyler to know what's going on over there. And the one thing we have to do, so I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I think there's just so few absolutes that are out there, okay? And Jordan Peterson has this guest on. He makes this quote. It's like, what's 1 + 1? And so the answer is 2, right? But not always. And I was like, what? Because if you take 1 wad of gum and you combine it with add 1 other wad of gum, you don't have 2 wads of gum. You have 1 wad of gum. If a cloud, like from appearance up on the sky down here, if 2 clouds kind of merge together, I don't have 2, I have 1. So the more point there was, very few things are so absolute. So, yeah, personally, I think Dabo has too much inexperience on his staff. And I might be right about that. But also, because I'm not in that building, and because I'm not professionally trained to know this, I might be wrong about that too.
And because he has a pretty good track record of making the right hires. That also compels you to not have a strong opinion, right?
Yes. Well, have a trust factor.
Yes.
Because again, now if you're writing for, and I was hosting a radio show on the flagship station for NC State football through the years, and Dave Doran makes a hire after going 7-5. He fires somebody going 7-5 for the 3rd straight year, whatever. I got a little more ammunition. I got a little more, credibility, I think, there. With Dabo, this season is the outlier to me. The last 3 kind of been the outliers, but for different reasons in there. And again, is he perfect? No. I've criticized Dabo, and I'll continue to criticize him on some things. But I'll preface it by saying, this is what I think. I don't know that. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, to your point, he's pretty good at what he does. I'll tell you one of the things that I talked to 2 different people in the last 2 weeks about this. I talked to one of his former coaches, and I talked to one of his former administrators who had worked in the NFL for years. and is currently out of football right now. And they've mentioned two things that I don't think that the average fan gets. The former coach said, Dabo really does know the game. He goes, not all head coaches really know the game. Some are CEO type stuff. He goes, but when Dabo sits in with a defensive meeting, he really does know what technique the linebacker should be playing. And he really does know where the linebacker should be, even though that's not his side of the ball, because he sits in on those meetings and he invests in those meetings. And you think about it, he's been doing it for 25 or 30 years. If you do something for 30 years for 6 hours a day for 9-10 months a year, you think you might know a little bit about that. And he goes, the average fan doesn't understand his depth of knowing the game itself. And I know, like, you've talked to former coaches saying, like, he doesn't interfere in play calls, but, like, message boards and, oh, man, he's interfering in play calling. This is his offense and not the other guys. And my sources, I think your sources are saying the same thing, that that's not the case.
Well,
the other thing is –
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said that, like, the other person that was in an administrative role who's been in the NFL, was in the NFL for years before this, oh, by the way, with the world champion teams in the NFL, said, I just don't get the idea that the head coach who's been around this long and this successful is supposed to sit back and not have a say.
Yeah.
Like, Dabo interferes too much. Well, he goes, I work for Bill Belichick. You think he interfered? Like, the head coach is going to have a say.
Yes.
Not to sit back and do nothing.
Yeah, and I'll say there's some gray area and murkiness when we're talking about the topic of how involved Dabo is in the offense. Okay, so you can say Dabo is not take over play calling, and also say Dabo's very involved in the offense because he always has been. I mean, you can see it. He has a play sheet that he's constantly looking at. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's like, all right, I'm going to take this series, Garrett. I don't think that is happening. But
the other thing that is, he is in offensive staff meetings every single day. He's in quarterback room meetings and wide receiver room meetings and offensive line meetings and the defense as well. And he is at practice and then at the post-practice and all of the self-scouting that they do. Like, he's involved in all of that.
Sure.
So why would he not?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly not saying he's, making the wrong move to be involved. I'm like you. I mean, the dude he's a Hall of Fame coach in a rough patch. I'm not going to, join the mobs and saying, yeah, he's got to do this or he's got to do that. I try to be very conservative with that. But I do think, so when he first hired Garrett Riley, when that bombshell happened in January, one of my first questions was, and I think probably one of yours too, was, does this mean Dabo's going to totally step away from management of the offense? And I'm wondering at the time, was that like a condition of Garrett coming? Like, okay, I have to have the key, totally have the keys, And so I don't think it's unfair for someone to say, okay, it's time for Dabo to just remove himself. I'm not saying not weigh in on decisions, but to be not as, in it as he is. He's clearly in it, and it might be something where, at the goal line, all right, let's go with this package that we worked, in practice, whatever. Jimbo Fisher, really fascinating development this season, after, and this is what bothers me about the media and the general conversation, is that when he hired Petrino, I mean, the whole offseason around Texas A&M, the conversation was, I don't think he's going to give it up. I don't know. I don't think so. We'll see. And he wouldn't really comment on it. If you remember, he wouldn't really give a clear answer, which coaches are prone to do before a season when they don't want to give away anything naturally to the first or second opponent. Well, turns out the dude is no longer carrying the tax return folder or whatever it is. It's like 82 pages of plays that he used to carry, and he truly, it appears, has taken his hands off the offense and totally given it to Petrino. I'm not saying that's what Dabo should do. What I'm saying is, if somebody says, I think Dabo should do that, I don't really have that much of a problem with that opinion.
So I'll say this. So I was not surprised to hear this, but years ago, when Alabama went through the Sarkisian and the Lane Kiffin offensive coordinator era. Friends on staff, and I'm like, well, how much is Saban involved offensively? Saban's a defensive guru, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the question I had was like, man, is like, is he goes, oh, no, he's in those offensive meetings. He's in those game planning meetings, and he's in their ear on stuff. So he said, the answer was, and if I remember correctly, I don't know exactly, but like, man, you'd be surprised like how involved he is in the offense. That's
Yeah.
Nick Saban. Now, but the point also to that is that's Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin. You know?
Yeah.
That's two huge names and two future head coaches. But even then, and the reason that is the case is because these head coaches, it is their name, it is their livelihood, it is their record that goes, you know, that win or loss goes on their record. And so we can't expect coaches. Bill Belichick, who's a defensive genius, is involved in offensive staff meetings and offensive game planning and offensive personnel things at New England. And they look better when Brady was there, obviously. But when it was Charlie Weiss or it was McDaniels, any of those guys, he's involved in that because he's the head coach. And I think it's unrealistic to expect that. I don't know this at Georgia because I've not asked Brandon Streeter. I don't have a whole lot of contacts at Georgia right now. But my guess is that Kirby Smart is very involved in the offensive staff meetings, the game plans, and all that. It should be because, you know, one thing's like, why would Dabo be involved in the defense? Dabo's involved on all these defensive meetings. Now, again, when you're really good on defense, nobody ever says anything about it. But he's been an offensive guy, so he kind of knows offensively to get the defense type stuff. So Nick Saban, I'm sure, kind of knew, hey, if the defense is going to be doing this, this, and this, here offensively, here's what we don't want to do, or here's what we'd like to do because of that, right?
And
so I think we'd be surprised, right?
And to Dabo, you know, everybody latches on to his influence that is supposedly negative while ignoring what could be a positive. And you're talking about the defensive side of the ball. He has clearly been more involved on the defense.
Well, so to that point, man, you're talking about really good. There's times where you've seen it this year, like he's over there in those defensive huddles a lot.
Yes.
Right? More than he's ever been.
Yes.
Well, he must be great because if his back is turned to the field and he's over there talking to the defense linebacker, he'll be able to call those plays. Man, that must be really, really good to do that, right? I mean, the fans are they might be right about that. The fans that say that, they might be right about that. But also they might be wrong about it.
And the thing is, oh yes, totally. And the thing is,
but Larry, like the message board guy and the guy calls up, they in their head they're not wrong. And so my point is, if you can point out that Dabo makes mistakes every single day, in every game he makes mistakes, and so he's not above any of that. But if we're going to say for sure that as a caller or a subscriber or a writer on a message board, like I think this because he's wrong about this, he might be. But also, I think you have to come to terms of, well, I might be wrong too.
Well, another element of human nature that has come forth with this is the very common phenomenon or trait or whatever of when you convince yourself of something, then you see what you see is distorted. Because I had a couple of subscribers yesterday, maybe the day before, on this topic. They said if just go back and look at the huddle before the final play against Miami, and Dabo clearly tells Garrett Riley what to call. And I'm like, okay, I've already watched. I mean, I watched it like 10 times because I'm always curious about that interplay. You know, when they're in the huddles, like what does it look like they're saying? You know, this and that. Well, I go back and watch it again, and could Dabo have told Garrett what play to run? Sure. Yes. But and this is just my opinion, and I'm not trashing a subscriber at all. There's nothing that a balanced, middle of the road person with no opinion on it could look at over that 9 or 10 seconds of the ESPN camera footage and say, "Oh wow, Dabo just told him what play to call." No, and so it's just another element of this where we see what we sort of want to see and what confirms what we very strongly believe.
Well, this is life now. This is society now, because you and I talked about this before. We're terrible arguers because we're not changing anybody's mind. If you're a great arguer, a great debater, you can change people's mind. Well, people's minds are already made up in advance, and you're not going to convince them otherwise, despite the fact that you might have. What we do now is we take our stance first, based upon maybe good information, maybe bad, who knows? But then we ignore all other counterpoints to it because we are tied to being right. And I think that's dangerous. I think we do it in all aspects of life. I do it. You do it. We all do this where, again, the older I get, the more I realize, I might be right about this, and I feel pretty convicted about this. But also there's a part of me that says that, man, 1 + 1 is not always 2. It's not. And I always thought I was right, and I always thought, but I'm not. And it's not. So here's the difference, though. When a listener calls my show, and he could be right about something or he could be wrong, the skin in the game is, I say, however, you say more than that. But the skin in the game is, okay, that's Tom from Greenville who thinks that. All right, well, on Tuesday, I don't remember what Tom said. I don't remember anything of it. When a coach is wrong about something, then millions see it, and we all pointed out just how wrong he was. So by opening up our minds of, could he be right? Yeah. Could he be wrong? Yeah. Their skin in the game is a lot more than mine and yours, man.
So my first reaction to the thing Monday night with Tyler and Dabo was, my nature now is to totally push away and ignore the debate that follows something like that. I just don't have it just doesn't interest me because I know what it is going to be. It's going to be pick your side.
Yeah.
And
you have already determined in your mind whose side you're on.
Yes.
And you will not listen to anybody who makes any sense outside of it. Let me give you a quick story, all right? So yesterday, I called a friend of mine who's in politics, who knows nothing about sports. I think he knows who Dabo Swinney is, but I'm not sure of that. Okay? And I said, hey, man, I know you're following this, but I need your help on something. And I sent him the link to all of that. And I kind of gave him some background. So this guy's coming from, he's a political strategist type guy, right? And again, he doesn't know if a ball has air feathers in it. Okay? So he has no preconceived, but I was just interested to hear. And he said, hey, man, this is my field. Like, this is politics.
Yeah.
And he goes, the people who are paying, he goes, you mean to tell me people care about this? I went, oh, yeah, they do. And like, there's tens of thousands of people who care about this. And he goes, this is crazy, but you think the same thing about me, right? I went, yeah. And he goes, but this is what we do every single day in our field. And it's you're preconditioned to response. You're thin-skinned. The person who's questioning in a news conference has already asked a pointed question. He's talking about like a politician in a press conference type thing. That the question is not the answer, not the question to get a response. The question is not to get the information. The question is to get a preconditioned response. So you can have, the press is going to have something against you, and you have something against them, and then the other party's going to have this on you. And it's all about sound bites. And it's all about like positioning yourself through this. But he goes, this is my life every day. I thought it was fascinating. Every day. And it's not, and it is politics has become sports, but it's like this guy who knows nothing about sports says, oh, well, now, and I kind of called him for that reason. I kind of called him just to get an intelligent person's answer. He goes, man, this is my life. This is what I do. This is what everybody's life is now. He goes, this whole caller and coach thing, that's everybody's life right now.
Exactly. Well, not everybody.
No, not everybody.
Everybody who's out there commenting, and using their platforms, which is fine. That's what society has an opportunity to do.
But we've fallen for it, Larry, like in life, like locally. I know your wife's involved in some things, and we've fought through some things on good and on side stuff. But like people who are opposed to some of that, they already know, like in advance, they know what they're going to tell you. And so it might be your school, it might be your church. People are fighting in church every day about stuff. It might be in your family. I've got it in my family right now. Like, we fight about stuff in our family, and I'm already conditioned to, I know what they're going to say in my argument. I know what I'm going to say back to them. And I'm not asking them the question. I'm not making a point trying to get information from them. I'm telling them something because I'm mad about something. And, like, that's what the guy told me yesterday. This political guy's like, this is life now. This is a great idea of what everybody's life is like all of a sudden.
I want to share with you sort of the play-by-play from my perspective, Monday night through Tuesday morning through Tuesday afternoon. And I know I am. You said before I hit record, you have Tyler fatigue, ready to move on, and I am 100% with you. I think even Tyler has Tyler fatigue. He's ready to move on too. But
hey, can I interrupt you on that though, Larry?
Yeah.
One thing I got from your article yesterday is he needs to marry that girl.
Yes.
Tyler, if you listen to this, marry her tomorrow, pal, because it's so good for you.
Oh, man.
I've met her a day in my life, but a man needs a woman like Tyler's girlfriend. Of all, Dabo, me, you, listeners, whatever, Tyler, whatever, the one winner in all this is the girlfriend. Boy, what a star she is.
Mickey, and I'm gonna sort of depart a little bit here, just sort of on the topic of women and wisdom, and on the topic of something you and I were discussing just yesterday about, hey man, I think that call-in show thread is a little, man, it's a little over the top, too much poking fun and all that. All right, and so I of course I'm like, okay, that's good to hear. I appreciate that. Well, just this morning, a subscriber, I think his name is Cavity Backs, he said, I would sit and just laugh at that thread each week, each Monday, and it's just, just innocent, humor, like trying to get some comic relief during a tough season. And my wife is like, what in the world are you laughing about? I guess this was this past Monday maybe. And he shows her the thread, and she's like, you guys are acting like a bunch of kids, like girl shaming or something, like in a high school or something. And he said, it made me think of it differently. And so I took that opportunity to say, hey, this might be a good reset for everybody, just in terms of tone, because what is in my brain as I'm sitting there laughing at a lot of this stuff, and it's in my mind, it's innocent humor and comic relief and all that, that doesn't necessarily translate to what people see that I have typed, and and so it probably does come off as poking fun, and coaches call-in shows are a I don't want to say bizarre, well, they're kind of bizarre in general. You have these callers who are fascinating because they call in every week. You have Bubble Screen Becky and this and that, and Billy from Raleigh who calls in every single week and says he can't wait to get down. He wants to come down to Clemson, and he loves Dabo. So there's a peculiar element to it for sure, but these are all good people. These are all people who love Clemson, and so should probably be a little more careful with what we're typing, because you don't know how that is gonna come off.
Well, a few things there. Number one, I know Heidi Williams, and I would yield to her more. I'm on a very serious note, man. She's so bright, and you know this. And I know you probably lean on her for advice all the time, but I think she's 100% right. So last night, my wife took my 7-week-old daughter and my 4-year-old son to my in-laws for the weekend. They had Monday and Tuesday off, so I hadn't seen them in like 3 days. And my wife doesn't know football. She doesn't know anything about football, but she's so doggone smart. And she's about to get her PhD, by the way.
Man,
and
awesome.
I'm gonna call her doctor, and she's got more degrees than a thermometer, man. So I lean on her all the time, and so I played everything for her through it. And she's familiar with Clemson football and what's going on, but I played this for her, and she's like, okay, here's a couple things. We can get into it about what she said, but man, she's 100% right in my opinion. So I'll lean on her for those types of things. And for full disclosure, I called you yesterday, and we talked about this, and because I came as you, and I prefaced it by saying, Larry, man, I love you, and we're friends, and this is not a personal thing, but weeks ago, I kind of didn't have a great feeling about your coaches show threads, because I felt like it was condescending, and that people were making fun of people, putting up memes of people with no teeth and those kind of things. But I said, that's not you, because I know you're good-natured, and you're not a mean-spirited person, so you didn't mean it that way. But I thought it got – and oh, by the way, I mentioned to you that 2 guys I talked to, one text and one on the phone, had agreed that and thought that for weeks too. And then I know people who are mad at you for interviewing Tyler yesterday, and I kind of pushed back on that with them a little bit in that I enjoyed that and learning more about all that and kind of seeing Tyler like as a human rather than the testosterone keyboard warrior guy, and having regrets now how it worked out. But the point is that, yeah, we got a lot of enemies in this world. We got a lot of problems in this world, but Clemson fans towards each other, that's not the problem, man. And Dabo Swinney's not the problem. And we got a lot of other things, but how we talk to each other is a major problem. And how you don't know what people are going through in their lives. There's some compassion needs to happen on all ends. But I think, yeah, it was a great lesson. This is, like I said, this is life, man. What happened Monday night is life.
Well, and the lessons were provided by two women. Tyler's girlfriend and Cavity Back's wife.
That's right, 100%.
Upstate foodies, want to take a moment to talk to you about our favorite taco spot, Willie Taco. 5 locations across the upstate. This award-winning team has been serving up fresh taco fusion for a solid decade now. The chefs at Willie Taco utilize the freshest, most creative, and sometimes unexpected ingredients in their kitchens. Come see why Southern Living, Garden and Gun, and Food and Wine Magazine are raving about Willie Taco and their signature offerings, such as their Southern Tide, crispy avocado, Nashville hot chicken tacos, literally flavors you will not find anywhere else, folks. And don't forget about the cocktails, super fresh margaritas, ice cold cerveza, and over 80 tequilas served up daily from behind the bar. So don't wait, folks. Your Willie Taco Familia is ready to serve you up their twist on funky, fresh fusion. It's the Willie way. Want to share a quick word about Founders Federal Credit Union? If you've been to a sporting event in Clemson, you've probably heard about Founders already. They are the official credit union partner of the Clemson Tigers. In addition to that, all Clemson faculty, staff, and students are eligible for membership as well as IPTAY members. Its office is located beside the Walmart Neighborhood Market on Old Greenville Highway in Clemson. For more information, go to foundersfcu.com. Celero Communications, formerly known as Tandem Payment, is a full-service integrated electronic payments provider powered by leading-edge technology. Celero provides a wide array of merchant solutions, simplified payments. They make onboarding, taking payments, maintaining risk management and compliance, and getting support quick and easy. At Celero, they're all about helping you achieve sustainable growth as a business. Taking payments isn't the only thing your business needs. With Celero's solutions, you can manage inventory, sell products and services via social media, schedule staff, track sales, get reports, and much, much more. Find out more about Celero at celerocommerce.com. That's CELERO commerce.com. So I'll go back to sort of the play-by-play, not to draw attention to myself, but more because I think it's interesting. It fits into what we're talking about. So the thing happens on the radio show, and I think I, like everybody, am like, holy crap. I've never heard Dabo go off like that on his radio show. I'm not sure I've heard Dabo go off like that publicly anywhere. I guess the closest would be the Spurrier thing, but that's a rival coach. That's not a so-called supporter. So I call Chris, my boss, and I'm like, hey, yeah, we're just sort of talking about it. And he says, are you planning on maybe calling Tyler tomorrow for your podcast or something? And I'm like, hell no. My first reaction is hell no, because, Mickey, when that show's over, I'm ready for that story to be over. Like I said earlier, I push away because I know it's going to turn into the latest either or pissing match between everybody, right? You have to pick a side. And so I'm like, no way. I don't want to give this guy a platform to further, to do exactly what he just did, to get even more attention. Well, then I realized, so we hang up, and then I realized, oh, he's a subscriber. Okay. And he even posted, I think, in the thread. Well, I had sort of not forgotten about it, but I had moved on. As of yesterday morning, I'm thinking about what I'm going to ask Dabo in his press conference. And I get to the press conference. I'm not on my message board looking at the arguments pro and, for Dabo, for Tyler, whatever. I'm definitely not on Twitter getting into the muck of that. I just haven't paid any attention, just mainly for my own sanity. I just don't really have much patience for it or enjoyment in it. So as the press conference starts, I have a direct message from Tyler on through the Tiger Illustrated platform. And he says, man, I think I went too far, and I just don't know, what should I do? And I'm like, well, first of all, like, I am not the person to be giving you advice here. I said, I mean, I respectfully say that I think you went too far in how you approach those questions. I also think Dabo probably went too far, but that's nothing personal at all. I appreciate your being a member and this and that. So then he responds again, and he says, I think I probably owe Dabo an apology, and I have some regret, and I just don't know how to handle it. You know, should I make a post on the message board or what? And that's when I'm like, okay, this guy is showing obviously some regret, showing some humanity, you know, that he screwed up. And so then I'm like, okay, I might be interested in talking to this guy. And so I reach out to Chris and I say, hey, would you be cool with me doing a podcast with this Tyler guy? And he's like, no, this needs to be an actual story. So if you interview him, write a story, and then we'll go that route. So I do. I spent an hour plus on the phone with Tyler yesterday afternoon. And this is, mind you, after Dabo has continued to go after Tyler in his press conference yesterday. Still very hot about what happened the night before. But my point is, I do the story, and I'm like, man, this is, I like this because it takes it a step further than just this pissing match. And it shares that this guy's a Marine who watched Clemson national championships from all over the globe and started going to Clemson games when he was 5 and really is scarred from the Tommy Bowden era, which probably explains why he's so negative about the present days. He just doesn't want it to fall apart. But after the story was posted, I went and looked at some of the reactions, and I was just like, oh, man, people were really, really upset that I had given this guy, this allegedly despicable person, a platform to further, keep this story going. And I didn't see it that way. And I'd certainly have nothing personal to anybody who didn't like seeing that. But my long-winded way of interpreting it is people had spent all day sort of crystallizing their opinion, right? Like they becoming further entrenched, and this guy's a scumbag and being more, enthusiastic, I guess, in that opinion. And so when they see this, it just sort of is a shock to the system because it's like, I can't believe you gave this scumbag, this guy who should rot in hell, for calling out Dabo. I can't believe you actually gave him the time of day. Anyway, I don't even know. I'm just trying to explain that sort of play-by-play. I think it's interesting in that, in a number of ways, but one, like I had not paid any attention to the fray or whatever, the social media message board discussion before that. So it was honestly a little jolting to see, Larry, I am disappointed in you, which I don't have a problem with. It's nothing personal, but I was like, man, I thought this was a sort of a human side of the story, just exactly what you just said, of this guy owning up to his mistake or, poor choice of a poor approach and saying, I'm going to be better. I'm going to try to be better from now on. I kind of like that. That's refreshing to me.
So a few things there. Number one, like when my wife heard it, she said, she stopped me after Tyler, as part of the phone call. And she said, Tyler sounds like me when I first started, and she's in education. She says, like, I give a presentation and I have 5 pretty good points and I make them all up front, and then I kind of go back and I get jumbled and I get nervous and then my message gets lost a little bit. And if there was because Tyler did have some points. I think Tyler's right about a lot of stuff he might have said, but then where he lost it was the condescending part of it. And so I'm gonna come back to that in a minute. So, but my point was like the inexperience of that. Okay, that's fine. The condescending part was because again, when I originally heard it, I didn't think that he wanted a question answered. Right. That was not a question about getting a fact-finding deal.
Yes.
Right. So I've got a friend who has an addiction problem, and I'm talking to a psychologist yesterday about this. I'm like, how do I go about this? He goes, are you going to jump them? Or are you going to try to find information? I was like, what are you saying? He goes, you try to have this big deal, or are you going to jump all over them? Or are you going to go in trying to find out the best way to help them? That's a good point. Like, ask questions and he told me to ask him this way rather than another way, right? And so it's the same way, like the experience of, if you want to know the answer, then come at it diplomatically, and you got some answers out of that, right? With that said, I think that Plyler is a lot like a lot of folks, and you go back and look at it, like he's taking the post down, but on Twitter his responses were, "I've seen enough of Dabo Swinney, got to fire Dabo Swinney." Right? There were 3 or 4 of those. You saw those tweets or replies?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Ask that question again. I just had to step away for a second.
I got you. Plyler tweeted 3 or 4 times in this fall, "I've seen enough of Dabo Swinney. Time to fire Dabo Swinney."
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that was Twitter guy. And what we talked about on that Monday night stuff that you guys are having, you get this group mentality of, hey, man, you got to ask us some tough questions. Somebody call in tonight. Yeah, you're going to show him. And so you got to get that. But the people, Jordan Peterson talks about this all the time in his podcast of like the anonymity of social media and the narcissism that goes on with message board guy or calling guy that like, okay, I'm going to show them it's about me. It was not a fact-finding mission. That was not a question answer. That was I'm going to show him kind of thing. And so when you break it down to outside the keyboard or outside the phone call, this is a dude. This is a guy. This is a guy that's hopefully going to serve our country, and we should love him for that and thank him for that. He's searching for his life professionally as an intern. He's got this unbelievable girlfriend. And now he's having these second thoughts about, that almost insurrectionist kind of attitude of these people got me worked. I'm going to say this, and this, and then I come back and go, oh, no, these are human beings, and I need to act like a gentleman and talk to people differently. If anything, this is a transformation story, right?
I hope so.
This guy he got humbled and learned this lesson. And by the way, Dabo needs to do the same thing to some of this because Dabo kind of can come back and learn some humanity. And I thought Dabo handled it okay with some things, but he probably said some things he shouldn't have as well. So this is a lesson on how to deal with people and talk with tact and dignity and how to go back and reassess that I wasn't always right about something. I could be wrong about something. These could be great redemption stories. It's already written. What you wrote yesterday was I gained respect for the guy. He's a human being. He's not a keyboard warrior now. Like he now has some humility and understands that these are human lives rather than a keyboard with no repercussions whatsoever. I
asked him about the Twitter stuff and because people are like, oh, there's the same guy who called for his firing. I don't believe it. Crap he's saying. Okay, that's fine. No problem. But, and again, we're taking all this at face value, his words. I can't independently verify that he's being 100% genuine. I'm not going to give him a lie detector test. I'm just taking it all at face value. And I think I'm a pretty good reader of body language and when somebody is truly, regretful of how they handled something. Well, I asked him about the Twitter stuff, and he's like, yeah. He's like, he's like, I'm not even sure how people figured that out because I registered under a not my name, but he just used that to sort of clap back and fire back at mostly Gamecock fans and talk smack to them. I think y'all were saying yesterday on your radio show that it's largely Spurs Up, him confronting the Spurs Up guy. And then, of course, yes, most recently, what was it, 23rd? What was that after, which game was that? Was that the losses are adding up. I'm losing track of them. What was it, Miami, I guess?
Maybe.
Anyway, whatever. Saying Dabo should be fired. Yeah, popping off. So he said, he's like, I've gone through some of those posts today, and this is before I talked to him. So, all right, so we're talking about this process for him, and you've already mentioned it. So he wakes up yesterday morning, girlfriend is like, dude, what is your problem? The way you look out there, I hope you're happy. You act like a child. People are calling you a child. So he's clearly, I think, taking a serious look in the mirror. And so part of that, he said, was going back and looking at some of those old tweets. And he's like, I've gone through some of those posts today, and my goodness, I am not proud of a lot of that. He also said, honestly, the social media stuff, that's what's wrong with society today. at one point in time, I would spout off about a lot of things on Twitter. I would just literally respond to other accounts, and some of those did involve Clemson. Now, if you want to say what he said about Dabo, firing Dabo, that's unforgivable, and you're never going to give him the time of day, whatever, that's fine. That, to each his own. But I'm kind of with you. Like, I'm interested to see how Tyler from Spartanburg, handles himself moving forward, And I think there's some hope there that, hey, he did learn an important lesson here.
Well, hopefully we all did, right? There is, when you can hide behind a made-up name on social media and the internet, then that is dangerous. But you still have you should have some sense of responsibility no matter what, or else you're just, again, narcissism is the way to describe all that, the people who might do that. We've got guys on our message board, right? So I got a guy right now, and I have labeled him, we don't label all of our text message guys, but I labeled him UGA turd. And the reason is because, like, normally it would come up with be 864-992-9722. And so, but you can go in and label somebody. Like, if I know it's you, I say, this is Larry Williams, so, I respond to him differently, whatever. Well, this guy put his UGA turd because his first 300 texts have been nothing but negative and only about Clemson. And in the last week or so, the guy has actually asked, like, some decent questions, but I'm not going to answer because now, he's still the same guy. Well, eventually I'm going to come to him and go, hey, are you done with your childish stuff? Are you done with all that? And if you can, then we can have an adult conversation. I'm a grown-ass man. I don't have time for the childish stuff anymore, When I was a child, I did, but now I'm not a child anymore. And I think we all can have that. Like, yeah, the idea that you could be anonymous is great, but it's dangerous too, man. And you've got to put yourself in other people's shoes. Did I send to you or do you send to me the screenshots of the death threats and the people calling Clemson players abortions and people burning down coaches' houses and all that? I mean, that's out there.
Brutal.
You pretend like it's not, but it's out there. And it's dangerous, Larry. And on top of that, there's just lessons to be learned of just how to communicate with people no matter what. And the person told me one time that right before you're about to jump somebody, you got to realize or put yourself in their shoes, like, what have they been through today? And I don't know. You don't know. You don't know what I've been through today. I don't know what you've been through today. But chances are there's something in there that might have caused you to do something that I didn't like, and now I'm gonna criticize you without knowing what your circumstances are. That's where we are.
You know what? Something interesting, something that people haven't really talked much about. I think Dabo mentioned it yesterday. Most coaches as high profile as Dabo, who have radio shows, don't take calls.
Oh yeah.
Also,
or taped.
What's that?
And screened.
Yeah.
Or they're taped or screened.
Actually,
when Hatfield was here and Tommy Wesley, that's what they did. Like, you'd have to call on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for the Tuesday call-in show, and they tape them, and then they play only the Pollyanna, the Sunshine Pumper people.
Earlier this season, on that thread, the call-in show thread, people are like, I can't believe these are the actual callers. All this positivity, all this love, Dabo, and we're praying for you, this and that. This can't be real. Surely they're screening callers, the ones who are more negative. And what I said then, said, no, they do not screen calls. And honestly, the people who are calling are probably closer to being representative of the average Clemson fan than this is no knock on the people I'm talking about, than the people who post regularly on social media or a message board. That's just reality. They love going to the games. It's fun. They hate it when they lose, but maybe more in line with what you said at the beginning, maybe more in line with a hobby. And so people were like, there's no way they're not screening calls. I'm like, okay, well, Monday night was proof of that. And something I learned yesterday from Don Munson was that not only do they not screen the calls, there's no delay.
Right.
And so my point is, in the wake of that, Dabo was saying yesterday, maybe I'll stop taking calls. I think it's a good reset. It's not saying that people can't be critical right? It's not saying you can't call in and say, Dabo, can you explain this to me? Why are we doing this? Or even, hey, do you think your staff needs to be upgraded? Like, I don't think he's going to go on a 10-minute rant for that. He might prove me wrong. But like you were just saying, there is a way to do it, and I think even Tyler probably understands that better now.
The older I get, the more I realize, like, what I don't know. I had this great friend of mine who was a Sony executive. He was a high-ranking Sony executive, and he told me our most dangerous employees are the ones that don't know what they don't know. And he told that to a 23-year-old kid at the time. I was 23. And I didn't get it. I finally get it. Like, at 55, I now know, man, the more I'm around, the more I experience, the more I understand that I don't know so much. And that's not a bad thing. But it's just realizing that there's so many people so much smarter than I am and so much more experienced than I am. And what I would criticize in the past, like I said, I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what's happening in their private life, their personal life. I'm not sure what's going on in that restaurant while my steak wasn't as good tonight. There's a reason for it, And I'm not sure why my supply chain hurt my rebuilding of my home, or I'm delayed in this, or why traffic is a certain way, or my road construction. But there's reasons for all that. I criticize on the air about the perimeter road traffic. Well, I didn't criticize. I'm sorry. Someone criticized it, and I read it on the air before the first game of the year. Next thing I know, I'm getting phone calls from 10 different people who I know who work at the university who've been in these meetings, and there's all kinds of state and coding and personnel stuff and material things and weather things and drainage things. There's a reason why that road is still delayed today. It's supposed to be done in August, and it's November, and it's still delayed. But there's a reason for that. And despite the fact, Larry, that I have zero experience in any kind of civil engineering, any kind of water runoff stuff, any kind of concrete, I don't know anything about. I've never been on a bobcat. I've never been on any kind of equipment like this stuff. I was telling these people how wrong they were, Yeah. But every one of those, there was a reason for all of that. And, hopefully we can just learn how to talk to each other. But now you're talking to a guy on this podcast today that I have called, I'm going to guess, 20 politicians and their offices on both sides of the aisle. Anytime there's a Senate confirmation hearing, I'll call both sides of the aisle and go, you ought to be ashamed of yourself how y'all talk to each other. People are watching you. You're the leaders of the country. You're some high-ranking people, and you're condescending and embarrassing the other side. And all they're trying to do is get someone to serve the country. And Republicans and Democrats, but why would we talk to each other? That's what our leaders are talking to each other like, right? I had a guy text me the other day, Larry, about the Clemson football player talking back to the coach the other day. And the guy says, the texter says, hey, well, thank goodness. The coaches have had all the power all the time, making millions of dollars. It's time for the players to talk back. It's time for players to have the power now. I'm like, no, man. There is an assumed authority respect that the student does not talk back to the teacher. The civilian doesn't talk back to the policeman. The teacher doesn't talk back to the principal.
The coach is not the coach is not your RA in a dorm.
Right, and even then, the RA is trained for what RA should be trained for, and they might be wrong. I don't care how wrong they are. You don't talk back to them that way. You're the resident. That's the resident assistant. That RA is doing his or her job. So there should be an assumed respect right off the bat that you have a question. I'm not saying they're right all the time. They're not. Dabo's not right all the time. But also, Dabo's a head football coach, and he has been successful enough that there should be a little level of respect. And if there was in the phone call, some points could have been made, and we could have got some information out of it, but we didn't. Now, to the point about coaching shows, calling shows, I agree with you. I had a caller today who's a Georgia fan saying, do we even need these anymore? And my thing was, you know what? Yeah, we do, because this is access. Like, no other time during the week, for 1 hour a week, any fan can call up and ask any question. And we might be able to get some connection, and there might be some flow of information there. So I do think there's a need for it. With that said, I don't care who it is. That's still the coach, and you're still the fan. So should be a level of, or even that's a gentleman and you're a gentleman.
Right.
Right? No matter, you might be the lowest paid employee at the lowest part of the country, and he might be the highest, but still, when he talks back to you two, the coach talks back, he's talking to a gentleman. And gentlemen don't talk to each other that way.
What did Sam Weiss say to the crowd, the Cincinnati crowd? We're not in Cleveland.
You live in Cincinnati. Well, you talk about Larry, that guy. I happen to be close
Rest
to
in
him.
peace, by the way.
Oh my word! What a genius that guy was. He was a treasure, and we were so lucky to have him in the upstate. But what a treasure, man! Awesome.
On the topic of genius, and this is the last thing because you've got to go be a father and help your wife. I think that Dabo's rant on Monday night and then his continued sort of fiery ways in his Tuesday press conference, I think that was genius. You know why?
Yeah.
Because we've spent an hour and 6 minutes.
Yep.
We have not said a word about this 4-4 football team and how bad things are.
They lost, Larry, Saturday. I hope folks stay tuned to this part of the show, this part of the internet podcast. They lost to a bad football team Saturday.
Yeah.
That might be the worst team that Dabo has lost to. And, yeah, you're right. We're not even talking about that. and the remaining schedule, think about it like that. 4-8 is on the table.
Yes.
And we're not talking about that. And it's brilliant to be able to deflect that. Spurrier was great at that, wasn't he?
Yes.
To deflect attention away from something. He was. Lou Holtz did a great job of that.
We're gonna go in this. We're gonna go in this room away from Ron Mars. If y'all want to come and talk to me in this room where he's not, y'all can come in here.
Yeah. And that's just brilliant part of it. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was a left-wing reporter about how brilliant Donald Trump was. And he said all these other reporters were so mad at Trump because this is during the campaign of 16. He's going, oh, man, the guy was just an idiot, and all my people thought this guy's a bully, and he's going to be this bad guy and all stuff. And the guy said, no, this guy's a genius. This guy's a salesperson. Like, he's got you covering him, talking about him. He's selling him the whole time. And so the point there was that all the distractions out there, it takes a genius to distract you from what we should be. So you know who the big winner is here through all this? Jim Harbaugh. So yesterday, Dan Lebatard's show at ESPN contacted our station.
Are you serious?
Tyler. Oh, yeah. Dan Lebatard's people and his producer called wanting information, wanting Tyler stuff, right? And, by the way, are you surprised that the national media seemingly is taking Dabo's side on this? Or did I perceive that wrong?
No, I don't think you have perceived it wrong. Andy Staples, who is fantastic, he did a 16-minute breakdown of this jousting. And if you haven't seen it, it's spectacular. But and that's another lesson here, Mickey, is that you cannot judge, you frequently cannot make a judgment off of one piece of a conversation or a quote that somebody tweets. And Andy said, and I think he was like a lot of the national media folks and probably like a lot of the people here, when you first see what Dabo says, you're like, holy crap, he just blew up one of his fans. And wow, what was he thinking? But then when you listen to the full 2+ minutes from Tyler, it's like, oh, okay, this guy got what he was asking for. Is probably the most common takeaway. But probably a little surprised, Mickey, that the national media is, it seems, more like, the guy had it coming to him.
Well, because Clemson's 4-4 now, right? So now Dabo's not the bad guy. Now he's the Roy Bus guy again, you know.
I don't know if it's that.
Yeah, I know. I was joking about that. Oh, okay. You're right, though. But
they still hate Dabo, most of them, I think. That's my point.
Yeah. But you know, one of the misconceptions I heard, a dear friend of mine who's brilliant and is an unbelievable father, husband, businessman, philanthropy guy, unbelievable guy, right?
Larry Williams, right?
He texted me. Oh, yeah, Larry Williams. Yeah, Larry Williams. he texted me, and he's a Clemson fan. And he said, well, I got one thing out of this. At least I now know that Dabo's got the fire back. And I texted him back, man, I totally disagree.
I do too.
Because Dabo didn't lose any fire. What Tyler was right about was that there were mistakes made, and he's going to make mistakes because he's a human being, Dabo that is, and he's a coach, and it's hard, and hiring people's hard, and firing people's hard, and getting the right. In hindsight, there's a lot of evidence that he didn't have in hindsight that he's going to change and do back, and maybe he'll do great, maybe he won't. But the one thing I can tell you is, and we talked about this before, is he loyal? Yeah. Does that mean he's stubborn? Yeah. Does he have self-belief? Commitment to himself? Yeah. Does that mean he's stubborn? Yeah. Is he optimistic? Overly optimistic at times? Does that mean he's too Pollyanna, can't see negative? Yeah. Is he a great visionary guy that sometimes sticks to the vision too much? Yeah, all those. But more than anything else, he's one of the most ultra competitive people I've ever been around. And it is, I never thought that ever left. Because you're losing, it's all about perception. I talk about this on my show all the time. Like when Mark Richt was winning, the perception was, I had him on the show one time, and I was like, how do you say that calm? He goes, well, if I panic, other players panic. So when Mark Richt was winning, it was like, man, he's got so much composure. And when Mark Richt was losing, it was like, he's lost his passion.
Yes.
And like when Bobby Knight is winning, you go, man, he's got intensity. And when Bobby Knight was losing, it's like, oh man, he's a wild card. He has no composure at all. And so the point there is like, Dabo Swinney shows this now at 4-4, and you go, well, it finally took this to get his fire back. No, I don't believe that at all. I believe he made mistakes. I believe that part of it is a little bit circumstantial, and there have been some bad luck through a lot of it. And I think he needs to make some changes into a lot of areas. Of those, I would say, Larry, mental toughness, physical toughness in his team. My guess is that from talking to folks inside, I would say coaching changes, more experience. That's a guess because I don't know, but that's a theory I might have. I would say more accountability. I would guess to be some of those things. But through all of that, there is no doubt about his competitiveness and the idea that if you think he's going to sit around and watch this and just take it because he's complacent, no, I don't believe that at all. I believe he's still as competitive as he's ever been.
And if you think that his persona in a post-game press conference is an accurate reflection of his persona behind closed doors, that's your mistake.
No, he is talking to parents, and when he talks to the media, he's talking to future players. When he talks to the media, he's talking to high school coaches. He's talking to his message is different there. So you had Landon Walker on not too long ago, if I'm correct. Former Clemson offensive lineman. Didn't you have him on?
I've had him on a couple times.
Yeah, and so he's on a weekly segment now. John Haidt, who's our producer at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock. They were roommates. And so John told me this morning, he goes, I asked Landon the other day before he comes on, like, have you ever heard Dabo get on you like that? He goes, oh, my gosh. Like, more than that. Like, that'd be easy through all that. I told you this story, I think, the last time that there's repeating, like, I have a friend of mine who goes to a lot of practices. And so Dabo, to your point about the message, Dabo was asked a question about a second-team offensive lineman, and I forgot who it was. And he goes on a race about the guy. We believe in this guy. This guy's we got a good one here. We hit on this one. The guy says, man, let me tell you, I was at practice last week, and Dabo, I felt sorry for the kid because Dabo rode him all week long. He rode this kid and ripped him up one down the other. But the message to the media was, oh, we believe in it. We hit on this one. This is a football player. We like this a lot. He's going to be a big player for us, you know? So the message is different.
And you said, and you just like you were saying, you don't know what a caller is going through or whatever. We also don't know what the head coach had gone through that day within those walls, right? We're talking, I'm thinking it's some hard sermons going on Sunday and Monday before that call, before he gets called out about his salary, before he gets, so there's some raw emotion there too. From a truly trying season.
That's a great point. But personally, I think he could have handled it better. and had he had time, might have handled it better because he's very diplomatic himself and he's a very wise guy. I mean, very wise person. I shouldn't say wise guy, but he's a wise person. So if you had to do all over again, even though he sat down and did the same thing yesterday, in reflection a few weeks from now after the season's over, he might feel different, like Tyler felt differently through all that stuff. But what with that said, too, he shouldn't have said some of the things he said, in my opinion. But like I told you, like in our world today, and I've probably done too much of this political stuff, but a part of the country gets attacked, and now you want a ceasefire? Like, no, man. If you attack, you got every right in the world to defend yourself. And when you defend yourself, you can't come back on the defender. And if the defender himself goes scorched earth on you, then guess what? You brought that upon yourself. So Dabo Swinney, much like the Middle East, right? You got every right in the world to defend yourself. And I thought he defended himself, his players, his coaches, with T Monday night.
Mickey Plyler, you've got more important things to address, but man, you've been very generous with your time, and I can't thank you enough.
I can't thank you enough. And just as a final message, we can speak kinder to each other. I'm included in that, and we can have a little more understanding what people are going through every day. And this is supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to be light because life's hard, man. And if we just had, hopefully Monday night, I commend Tyler, I commend you on that article. Hopefully we all learn a lot and we emerge as kinder, gentler, more understanding, more compassionate people. And remember too, like these are Clemson fans. You're on the same page, right?
Yeah.
Like this is your team. This ain't like I remember Harold Coleman saying one time, man, I just want to get back. This is during COVID or during a political thing where he said, I just want to get back to where I can just talk smack to Gamecock fans again. Like, I just want to get to where I don't like Spurrier anymore, rather than having to dislike for my own program, my own thing. Anyway, I always enjoy it, Larry. I always love reading you and Paul and Chris, and I'm a loyal subscriber, and hopefully more. I know more content's coming out about this later.
You're the man. Thank you, Mickey. That was wonderful.
Thank you, buddy. I always enjoy it.
Man, Mickey and Larry have turned into two snowflakes. That'll be the conclusion from some folks. I'm just joking. Really appreciate his time. Also, of course, appreciate the continued support of our sponsors for helping make this happen. And, of course, most of all, thanks to every one of you for taking the time to listen. Really appreciate it. Cheers.